Hello and welcome to this short video about the 5 misconceptions about mindfulness that are sabotaging your practice. My name is Martina. I'm a medical doctor with an interest in mindfulness. I'm dedicated to explaining how we can make the most of our minds by learning from neuroscience, philosophy, and psychology. This video is for people who have made their first step in mindfulness and are looking to make the most of their practice. To make this video, I teamed up with mindfulness practitioners who have spent more than 10 years living in Buddhist temples, as well as seasoned neurologists and psychiatrists with expertise in mindfulness, so that you don't sabotage your practice. Mindfulness has become quite popular and seems to be gaining even further momentum. It is said to soon be very mainstream. As is often the case with explosive popularity, there are some misconceptions and misinterpretations about mindfulness making the rounds among bloggers and on social media. The first is that mindfulness is a uniquely Buddhist concept. It is not uniquely Buddhist. Mindfulness has roots going back to Christianity as well. More than that, wherever humans have existed, they have discovered mindfulness. Many traditions poke around the mindfulness bush, some more directly than others. Why? Because mindfulness is healthy. It makes sense, evolutionarily speaking. A mindful population will thrive. A population lacking mindfulness will have a hard time propagating the genes that define its character. Christianity has elements of mindfulness practice present in ritual and sculptural form, both within and outside the canon. There are a number of passages that obviously point to the practice of mindfulness, and there are many others that, when understood in context, point to mindfulness practice. Whenever you have people that are practicing awareness of what they are doing in that moment, you have mindful people. When people know that they are washing dishes, they are mindful dishwashers. Christians who are mindfully carrying candles, passing out bread and wine, and consciously delighting in each other's company are Buddhist Christians. In the words of Thich Nhat Hanh, Buddhism is a practice, like yoga. It is not a religion in the way that Christianity is a religion. There are no gods, no required beliefs, nothing to take on faith. It is an open-ended teaching, hiding nothing, encouraging actual practice, letting you realize things without forcing it. The labels of Buddhist and Christian can be hindrances. It is nice to respect our spiritual ancestors, but it is foolish to isolate ourselves within the confines of some set of teachings. Old maps may not necessarily accurately represent present territory. Some people make the claim that there is an actual historical link between Jesus and Buddha. Indeed, there were Mahayana monks in Egypt during Jesus' lifetime. But, with or without the causal connection, Buddha and Gnosis is one. The message is the same. People can happen across the same spiritual truths in totally separate cultural contexts. The historical connection would be interesting and exciting, but it is not necessary. So in conclusion, there are some big gaps to cross as one journeys between worldviews, but if we look within, we will find one human experience. We are unique, but we share a common ground. Naturally, mindfulness occurs in religions other than Christianity and Buddhism, and we will try to address that another time. The second misconception about mindfulness is that it is about detachment and emptiness. Buddhist terminology also presents some problems for the Western mind. The translators of yore did not have the proper conceptual tools to work with the subtle ideas generated by Buddha's genius. And still, people are hung up on the ideas of non-self, emptiness, detachment, non-striving, non-judgement. The Christian West has to do some serious psychic judo to make sense of these things without experiencing intense fear and trembling. There are many potential points of conflict, but let's focus on non-self. This seems to have been one of Buddha's big ideas. There is no independently existing ego or self-sustaining identity anywhere in existence. All is dependent on all. Every square inch, square centimeter, every atom is as significant as the largest star. A better way to understand the non-self is using the word interdependence. So when you read non-self, emptiness, voidness, etc., just remember interdependence. In the West, largely populated with traditional Christians, many have trouble with all this. There is this idea of something out of nothing that the Christian must accept in order to fall in line with dogma. It is totally illogical. Therefore, the Christian declares that faith is necessary. The question, what was before the beginning, will never be answered. And this is what Jesus is implying in the Gospel of Thomas when he encourages us to ignore those who claim to know the way to heaven. On a more comforting note, the Jesus of the Gospel of Thomas also recognizes this truth of non-self, which is very closely related to the truth of impermanence, another central Buddhist concept. He also declares that all things that come together will fall apart. Everything will change. To reiterate, there is nothing in the definition of mindfulness that talks about being non-judgmental or non-striving. It's all about being present, being aware of what's actually happening in the present moment. The third misconception about mindfulness is that it is part of the positive thinking law of attraction worldview. Many have come to view mindfulness as a close cousin of positive thinking. Mindfulness cultivates interdependence, which is the exact polar opposite of insisting on only ever dignifying positive thoughts with our attention. A concept seemingly resonant with positive thinking and the law of attraction appears in the Dhammapada, one of the primary collections of the teachings attributed to Siddhartha. Mindfulness precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-wrought. If within an impure mind a person speaks or acts, suffering follows him like the wheel that follows the foot of an ox. However, mindfulness emphasizes the value of accepting things as they come. Yes, we all do create our reality, but we certainly don't do it alone. Reality is seen from a fundamentally different viewpoint in the philosophy underpinning mindfulness. The Bodhisattva does not proclaim that things are either positive, negative, or neutral. Buddha abides beyond good and evil, beyond positive and negative and neutral. In many Buddhist schools, there is this idea of the 5 skandhas, the 5 heaps, the 5 collections or aggregates. Instead of a self-sustaining ego, Buddha spoke of these components, the 5 skandhas, that make up a personality. In mindfulness, there is no positive without negative or neutral, and the same is true for negative and neutral. Our strength is not found in forcing reality to remain positive. We are considered accomplished because of the strength we have to endure what life brings us. We endure the ups and downs. We remain in this mind system unperturbed by the positives, negatives, and neutrals. The fourth misconception is that mindfulness is a natural remedy for anxiety. People want to talk about mindfulness as if it is some miracle pill. There are some fantastic effects from it. However, despite what we hear, this practice of mindfulness is not always roses and cotton candy. The practice of mindfulness may reveal things one has been avoiding. This can be painful. This is where the real work lies. Learning to see clearly requires deep compassion for oneself and those around us. Mindfulness meditation is work, but it is healthy, soothing work. New things will be noticed. New things can cause fear. If new things aren't being noticed, if the fear isn't arising, it is probably a good idea to refocus the practice. But how? The goal is not to be rid of negative emotions such as anxiety. Mindfulness meditation teaches us to put harsh feelings into context and not become totally overwhelmed by their presence. The goal is not to become a happy, tranquil yuppie. It is to become present, aware, and in touch with the actual bold-faced reality. Yes, there are benefits, mental and physical health benefits. Breathing meditation can bring calm. Negative feelings can also arise. They are as real as the positive feelings. During practice, all of these arising positive and negative thoughts are gently touched, and like the fragile bubbles that they are, they pop. It's not difficult. There is no strain. However, it is work. It's perfectly paradoxical. The fifth and final misconception is that mindfulness is a medical treatment. There is some preliminary data that mindfulness training has a beneficial effect on seizure frequency in patients with epilepsy. It is a medical condition associated with tremendous anxiety and stress, so mindfulness could have a significant benefit in more than one way. Some robust studies have shown that the frequency of relapse in multiple sclerosis decreases with mindfulness intervention. The effect from mindfulness is similar in magnitude to the effect from beta interferon. There is also some research showing that the frequency of inflamed gadolinium-enhancing lesions decreases with mindfulness. John Kabat-Zinn used to take patients who suffered from chronic pain and had diseases for which we had no answer, and these patients got better. Even beyond neurology, there is some evidence that mindfulness can have benefits in psoriasis and other diseases. We are probably only at the bottom of this mountain. Here in the West, the main drive for the explosion of mindfulness practice seems to be coming from the medical community. This is great. As always, however, medicalizing normal processes is dangerous. It is especially common these days when people look to science for answers, rather than to religion. However, difficulty arises when science, which is much more about questions than it is about answers, becomes scientism, or high priests with PhDs handing out evidence-based dogma. There is a lot of cultural appropriation going on around here. Doctors are not far off from taking credit for practices that have already been employed for thousands of years. On the surface, this is all fine and dandy, but looking deeper, we can see that it's part of a larger pattern. We Westerners have not been so kind to our friends around the world. The practice of mindfulness cannot be owned, but it seems that we should be giving more credit to its Eastern roots. Indeed, those roots extend beyond the Buddhist tradition. There are many things to be learned from the cultures that have grown up with these practices. Instead, it looks like, as Westerners, we're trying to distill the useful practices from what we consider to be a superstition. Our sciences are constantly revealing a stranger and stranger reality. We would do well to hold our verdicts on what is and what is not superstition. It's been a pleasure having you.